Right, covers millions of South Africans earn irregular incomes, making traditional insurance difficult to maintain. Metropolitan believes its new no-lapse funeral growth plan could change that by offering more flexible funeral cover. But will it make a real difference to financial inclusion? To expand the conversation, we're joined in studio by Peter Chigubo, who is the Metropolitan CEO. Very good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Afternoon, Mpo, and the viewers at home.
Research, I mean, just looking at the importance of a funeral cover and signing out what research has said, it suggests that almost 11.9 million South Africans fall into what is referred to as the foundation market, which is essentially the underserved market, which includes a lot of people in the informal sector, domestic workers, a lot of grant recipients who rely on side gigs and form part of the gig economy. What does that tell us about the state of financial inclusion in South Africa as you've read the market?
So, Mpo, you're 100% right. The foundation market is really sitting with a huge opportunity. We have got plus minus 11.9 million customers who fall into that category. In my mind, when you look into the numbers that we found out through the research, nearly 40% of that particular 11.9 million, they are younger than 40, which means these are economically active people. On the other hand, unemployment is very high, which means these individuals are not necessarily earning a monthly income, which is why even those who have been sitting with a side hustle, now it is a hustling culture. That's how you can be able to generate income for yourself. Now, when you look into how the funeral policies have been structured, I mean, it was a different context when we did that. Now we have to evolve and to make sure that we can be able to take into consideration some of these changes that we are seeing in the market and come up with the innovative products which can be able to make sure that people can have cover. When you talk about inclusion, it talks about access. And now, how can we make sure that these people can be able to have access to this solution? Yeah. If you are not employed, you will find that the only way you can get a solution is when people can come to you. Now, as the insurance industry, we have some work to do to make sure that we can be able to take the products to them, one. Number two, the products must be simple to show understanding of their own circumstances, which is why this no-lapse funeral policy, in my view, it solves so many of the challenges they have. You have so many of these people who, they have taken up a funeral policy, but somewhere along the way, you can no longer keep up. And then the policy lapses. You have also lost your money. Now, how can we be able to really make sure that we solve that? Can
you perhaps expand on the no-lapse funeral growth plan? Just give us a lot more depth and understanding. How is it fundamentally different from a traditional funeral cover? Because you talk about having evolved and watched the market. I mean, it's quite significant that you talk about nearly 40% of a group of under 40s are relying on the so-called gig economy, informal work to make ends meet.
So maybe let me start by defining what a lapse is. If you take out a funeral policy and you get to a point where 3 consecutive months you couldn't pay, your policy lapse. Whether you have been paying for the last 10 years, 5 years, the money that you have paid, you're not getting it back, and you have also lost the cover. Now, with the no-lapse policy, as long as you can be able to pay 1,500 rand within the first 12 months of taking up this policy, the cover that you would have got, you have it for life. And now, that is the one thing that this policy is bringing. Number two, for you to be able to pay the initial 1,500, understand that we know there will be months where you don't have enough money. Even those who are receiving the government grant, you find that as much as I get a grant every month, there are months which I cannot be able to afford to pay. Now, this takes that into consideration, which really talks to the flexibility you have for you to be able to pay. And then the third element, if you have already achieved your 1,500 within 12 months, and then you don't have to pay anything if you feel the cover that you have is sufficient. Years later, you may have access to money. You can come and top up. When you top up, then your cover will also be able to grow. Another element, when you take out this policy, you get an SMS, which I will send you mine. And in this SMS, it will say, I have taken up a no lapse funeral policy. And then say to friends and families, you can also join. When those people join, the 5% of the premium which they pay from their side, it buys me additional cover, which means I would also be able to really increase the cover that I have.
It's a game changer. I mean, it really is a game changer, especially considering how month-to-month premiums are simply unaffordable for a lot of the segment that you speak to. And also just considering and factoring in that the months will differ. Not everyone will be able to afford it. But of course, I would imagine that you want to encourage people to try and make sure that they consistently pay so that the benefits at the end, should one require, in the unfortunate incident of death, that there is a significant amount of coverage.
So what we're solving for here is, currently we have got a number of different funeral policies in the market. They still have a place, even into the future.
Yes.
But different clients have got different needs and different challenges. With this solution, as we said, those who have got infrequent income, this is a solution to them. Just to give you an example, even those who don't necessarily sit with money every month, they always hope that I can be able to have cover. Because for you to have funeral cover, it means when one of your loved one passes on, you can be able to give them a dignified funeral. Now, we did research in our own book, Business. We looked into how much premium are we collecting every year for policies that lapse within 12 months. And we found that we are taking 390 million annually for policies that lapse. But in the end, this doesn't create value for us because we haven't even recouped the acquisition cost. On the other hand, the people who took up these policies, they don't have cover because the policy would have lapsed, some of them within the waiting period, which means it is a challenge. If you look into 390 million for Metropolitan alone, when you look into the industry as a whole, it's more than 6 billion of the premium that is really received by underwriters for no value, and it doesn't create value for the benefit, which is why we're saying, yes, the industry has changed and we need to make sure that we can be able to live up to that. I cannot be excited enough when I look back 4 years ago. We coined our new long-term ambition as Metropolitan to say our long-term ambition is to be a household name with at least a policy in every emerging market home. But we knew with the policies, the kind of policies we have, we wouldn't be able to achieve that, which meant we need to come up with some innovative solutions which can help us to be in every emerging market home.
And sorry, before we let you go, perhaps in closing, just talk to us about the importance of having a funeral cover. I mean, we've seen the horror stories having covered so much in terms of news and people's real realities on the ground when it comes to the struggle, the burden, and the real emotional challenges when it comes to not being able to lay a loved one to rest.
I think that's the reality that we all face. And if there's one thing that we all know it will happen, one of our loved ones will one day pass on. And then when that happens, they don't first ask, do you have enough money to be able to bury your loved one? Which is why, by ensuring that you have got cover, through this no-lapse policy, the day you have really cemented the initial cover, you know I have got cover for the people that I love whenever they pass on. If you don't have cover when someone you love passes on, the challenge you have is, how do you bury them? You end up having to go to the bank to make a loan. If you can't find the bank from the loan, the loan from the bank, then you end up having to go and ask money from the mashonisa. So your problem becomes even bigger. Now, make sure that you start today. You look into this to get your own no-lapse funeral policy, because that's how you would be able to really defray some of the cost you may have to incur when your loved one passes on.
Yeah, very well. Thank you so much for speaking to us. An
Thank you,
absolute
Mpho.
game changer when it comes to the funeral policy segment. The new no-lapse funeral growth plan really offering a lot more flexibility and inclusion when it comes to funeral planning and policies. Peter Chigubo, who's the Metropolitan CEO, summing that for us.